I'm from the Philosophy Foundation. We're a charity, a registered charity that do philosophy in schools. We work with children and teachers. And I've got a few minutes, nearly 7 minutes, to try and engage you with what it is that I do, okay? And there's a number of ways I could do this. I could try and be funny, but I'm not. I could have some nice slides together, but I haven't got those. All sorts of ways in which I might engage you. But I think that because I do philosophy, the best way for me to try and engage you is to engage you with ideas. So that's what I'm going to try to do. Try to engage you with ideas. If I walk into a classroom of a difficult classroom, let's say, I need to engage that class pretty quickly. Pretty much like boxing. It's not so different. You know, someone punches you in the face, you're engaged. You've got to then respond, okay? Now, a quick word about philosophy before I do this. Not everyone knows much about philosophy, but basically what I'll say to the children is that philosophy is to do with something we do in here. Usually they start shouting out. What would they shout out? Thinking. Using your brain, all that sort of stuff. Okay, so somebody said to me today, just today, coincidentally, said, if thinking were a force of nature, what kind of effect would it have? Good question. When we do philosophy, we think, oh yeah, what's all this thinking malarkey for? What are we actually doing? Well, I mean, thinking in philosophy, thinking, for instance, my answer to him was that the effect it has on the world, well, what kind of world will we have? I think we'd have the world as it is. The world as it is now is a product of thinking. When the first spear was lifted, when tools were used, when Newton sat down and did F equals ma, you know, these abstractions, higher order thinking, have really impacted on the world. Agriculture, nuclear power, all these things are in some way a result of higher order thinking at some point along the line. Abstraction and various other things. So, and even philosophy might be more impactful than you might think on certain innovations. One innovation I'm thinking of is the computer. Aristotle innovated the language of logic. This was developed and has been developed over the years. Philosophers like Leibniz and Pascal developed actual physical computers before Babbage. You know, so the impact is really quite huge. So that's my little plea about the impact of philosophy. But let me try and engage you in some thinking. I haven't got long to do this. You might be in a classroom and you might be doing something on some kind of innovation such as flight. You might ask a simple question. I might ask you, imagine you're a classroom of children, all right? And I might ask you, who invented flight? Hands up, by the way. Birds. Right, well, we've got an answer. Birds, interesting. Now, what I'm interested in this from a philosophical point of view, because the tool I'm going to use with you right now, in the next 3 minutes or so, is a new technology, well, relatively new. It's called conversation. The tool I'm going to use is relatively new, so questioning. So these are the sorts of things I'm here to sort of show off today. So let me just take you through this. If I ask you, if somebody says to me, the birds invented flight, I want a hand up if you think there's a problem with that. Or if you have some kind of response. Yeah. Who invented birds? Right, so now we have a problem. Who invented birds? Have you got anything to say back to that, sir?
The egg.
Did egg invent birds?
They had eggs, right? Did eggs invent chicken, egg? Not sure.
Do eggs invent? A good question. We're already starting to see some of the issues. Hands up if your brain is starting to go. Hands up if you're starting to think about some of this stuff. You hopefully are starting to think about some of the conceptual stuff involved in innovation. Invention. What is it to invent something? That's hopefully the sort of thing that's going through your mind now. What is it to invent something? What is it to come up with something new? Did a bird invent it if it just does it? What about the Wright brothers? They weren't born to fly, so did they fly? Well, many people will say that the Wright brothers invented flight, apart from those that say the bird. But what about Da Vinci? Da Vinci had already come up with some plans for flying machines before the Wright brothers. He didn't test them. They've since been tested, and some of them even work. So now we're left with the question, did he invent flight before the Wright brothers? What about Icarus? The story of Icarus, a myth, goes back a long, long way. Comes from Crete. I was there just a few weeks ago. And a story like Icarus, does that aspirational story about an innovation that had not yet been made, by humans anyway, was that the invention of flight? Hands up if you think the invention of flight was something like Icarus. And I'm not talking about birds, but human flight. Is the aspirational story a kind of invention? Yes. Hands up if you think that it was the Da Vinci. Okay. And hands up if you think it was the Wright brothers. So what I would want to do now, and I haven't got time to do this properly, is I'd want to connect you all. I want to find out why you think it's Da Vinci. I want to find out why you think it might be the aspirational story. I want to then find out how you agree or disagree with the people that think it's birds or humans. That connection I'm looking for. Now, I don't have time to do it now, but you can imagine that if I just go around and ask you each what you think, and then get the others involved, it doesn't take long to engage a group with ideas. So I'm hoping that even those who didn't put your hands up are still starting to think, actually, I need to know what invention is here. Is invention something that happens in the mind, or does it have to actually be done physically before it's done? Those sorts of questions are hopefully going through your mind. So I'm going to round up there, but if anybody does want to get in touch, and I can send you some lesson plans along these lines if anybody's interested, then do get in touch. I've got some free lesson plans I can put your way. I think there's also an infographic in your bag, so you might be able to find out about the Philosophy Foundation there. But I'm going to finish with this little anecdote, this little story. Ray Bradbury said that he used to write stories by throwing himself off a cliff and building his wings on the way down. I think that's a nice way to think. Thank you very much indeed.
Round of applause for Peter. Thank you so much.